Hello and welcome to the City of Rockville's Conversations in Rockville podcast. In this podcast, we'll discuss things happening in and around the city, including city initiatives, programs, events, and services available in our great community. The Conversations in Rockville podcast is available on Spotify and Apple Podcast. Welcome to Conversations in Rockville, our special Black History Month edition, Conversations in Black. As we honor Black History Month, today we celebrate Black men's health through the powerful story of Rockville Fire Marshal Carl Young, a survivor of Diffuse Large B-Cell Lymphoma, or DLBCL. Research shows that Black men with DLBCL often face unique challenges. They are frequently diagnosed younger, often between the ages of 50 and 63, and historically experience lower 5-year survival rates than their white patients. These disparities are tied to access to care, socioeconomic obstacles, and possibly biological factors. Yet, studies like the one from the National Library of Medicine, which reviewed over 3,000 lymphoma cases within the Veterans Health Administration, revealed something critical. When Black patients receive equal access to standard treatment, survival outcomes are the same across races. It's simple. Equal access saves lives. Carl's story is a testament to that truth. After months of unexplained stomach pain, he was diagnosed with DLBCL in 2025. Through timely medical care, chemotherapy, and a holistic approach to wellness, Carl fought through, and today he is disease-free. Stay with us as we dive deeper into his health journey, what his experience teaches us about Black men's health, and why equitable access to care remains essential for our communities. Now that we've set the stage, let's move into the heart of today's conversation, because behind every statistic is a real person, a father, a husband, a son, and in this case, my colleague, and a community protector. Carl Young is all of those things. His experience not only reflects the disparities Black men often face in the healthcare system, but also the power of early action, persistence, and informed self-advocacy. So we're going beyond the diagnosis. We're exploring the mindset, the turning points, the fear, the faith, and yes, the resilience that carried him through. Carl, thank you for being here and for your willingness to share your health journey with us. Let's start the conversation.
This is my pleasure.
All right, Carl, let's just get right into it because this is such an important conversation. Your journey began long before your diagnosis. When your body first tried to tell you something was off, those early moments can be confusing. Even sometimes we dismiss it because we're like, I'm getting old. Yeah, I guess that's just me getting old. And normally, especially this, Black men tend to push through the pain because they don't like going to the doctor. So let's start there. When did you first realize something was wrong and it was early symptoms that made you feel that this wasn't just a day-to-day, oh, my joints, I'm getting old type of thing?
Okay, well, yeah, thank you, Kathy. So I realized that something was wrong back in probably November, December, early 2024, when I started having these complications or digestive issues, not only with digestion, but anytime I ate anything citrus, orange, or even apples, anything like that, and especially tomatoes with acid base, my stomach it would just go into a burning sensation. And it was at that point that I realized something was off. However, I still, like many people, and especially men, I was in denial. I said, this can't be happening to me, because I used to tease my wife. I used to tell her, I got a tank for a belly. I can
Right,
eat
right.
anything.
Like, I can eat all them hot wings, honey. Don't worry about me. Let me get some Pepto. I'll be all right.
Exactly. And she kept telling me, she said, you need to get that checked out. And I said, yeah, I'll get it checked out. But like, many of us professionals, we put work first and other responsibilities, and we don't do what we need to. However, at that point, I had a real bad day. I was in the office, and I ate an orange for breakfast, and it just really sent my stomach into shock. Just the pain, it was just overbearing. And then at the time, the deputy director here saw me, and she was like, "You need to go home." And that's really when I really realized that there was something going on, that I need to get checked out.
And so you went to the doctor, got checked out. How many, like your first doctor's appointment? Paint that picture for me.
Sure. So initially, I went to my primary care physician. Started with him, and he wanted to check me for H. pylori, because he said this is a very common bacteria that's in a lot of people's bellies, in their stomachs. Actually, 40% of Americans are walking around with H. pylori, and they don't know it. A lot of times, those are the stats that he threw out at me. And he says, most healthy people, it will clear up on its own. However, I wasn't healthy. At the time, I just wasn't healthy.
Okay.
Dealing with all the stress, dealing with, lack of sleep, all of these things kind of, added to this issue that I was about to face. So he tested me in his office for H. pylori. I came back positive for H. pylori.
What does that test look like?
So this was it's a breath test. They test you to see how much, certain carbon dioxide that you're putting out. So you breathe into a bag. Well, you drink the solution first, and then you breathe into a bag, and it will actually, test you and indicate positive test or negative test. And that's done in most doctors can do that in the office. So based on that test, came back positive. And then he started me on a regimen of antibiotics. And so I started the antibiotics, I believe, for about 7 days. And I was still having the issues. And so he says, well, hey, listen, we need to get you over to a specialist. And I said, okay. So then I made an appointment to see, a gastroenterologist, and one of the best in the area. So I was very fortunate to have that access. And he said, listen, I want, based on your history as a firefighter, former firefighter, operational firefighter, and with all of the toxins and all of those things that you've been exposed to, he says, I want to make sure that there's nothing there. So he says, we're going to do a colonoscopy, and we'll do an endoscopy. And I said, Doc, are you sure we need to do an endoscopy? And he was like, my friend, we need to do an endoscopy.
You were still in sort of denial, sort of just going through the motions because that's what they told you needed to. But you just like, you really doing all this for nothing. I'm all right.
Exactly, because I said, hey, I'm strong. I'm
Right.
working out. I felt like I was in good shape. But he says, no. He says, I want you to definitely have the endoscopy. And I did. And that's when, that was March 17th of last year, of 2025. And when I came through after the procedure, he says, listen, he says, my friend, I'm a little concerned. And I said, okay. He says, I'm concerned, and I want to get you over to a specialist. And I could tell, I read body language, really
Yeah.
well. So I, not his body language, but it was his nurse.
Oh,
His nurse.
she's the one that told it, huh?
Oh yeah, her body language. She looked at me and she had this great fear on her face, and I was never afraid. I never had any fear because of my faith,
Right.
and my upbringing.
Right.
I've been exposed to a lot of, just resilient, tough men, and my dad told me, he says, and I hate to say this, but it's the reality. He said, he told me when I was very young. This is my father's of Nigerian descent.
Okay.
Yeah, and he told me, he says, you have the heart of a lion. And he says, you should never, ever be afraid of anything in life. He says, you face it head on with, with the tenacity that that we all have, our ancestors have.
That's right.
And I said, well, great. And it came into play because, the doctor, he says, do you have any concerns or questions for me? I said, no, doc. I said, let's get the test done and we'll go from here. But I have to back up, though, Kathy.
Okay.
I have to back up because my story is a little unique because I had a pre-existing condition also. So it
Okay.
made it a little more challenging because I had been diagnosed in the fire department with early onset of kidney disease.
Oh,
Oh yeah.
okay.
So
Oh,
so
wow.
and that plagues our community as well. All communities, but particularly
Yes.
in the Black community, kidney disease.
Yes.
And so I had been they were treating me for that. And so in my mind, I'm like, whoa, what now? And I just thought, I said, well, God will never give me more than I can handle.
That's the truth.
So I said, this is not going to be a problem. But what really helped me, and I got to talk about it, is that when I saw my nephrologist, because I had the test, and fortunately, I had all of these doctor's appointments lined up just by happenstance. Right. And so I was going to see my nephrologist, and he said something to me that changed my life. He told me, he says, because I'm working out, I'm 6'3",
right.
and I prided myself in being in good shape. But he says, you're obese. He told.
Well, I don't want to hear that.
No,
'Cause
nobody wants to hear it.
If you're obese, then I ain't going to say what I am, but keep going.
But no, honestly, he says you're obese, and I looked at him. I'm like, well, no, I think I'm overweight. He says, no, you look at the NIH chart. He says you're obese, my friend.
Wow.
And I said, you know what, Doc? I said, you'll never be able to say that to me again.
That part.
Yes. So I went home and I told my wife. She was she looked at me. She could tell I was upset, and I said, he had the nerve to tell me that I was obese. She said, obese? I said, yeah, by these stats. And so that also changed my life. That changed my, as far as my attitude about myself.
Right.
Because sometimes we like to see ourselves differently than what we truly are.
That part.
Yes. And we don't want to say, unfortunately in our community, we say that we're big boned or big boned or whatever.
We just thick in the waist.
Yeah. No.
Nah.
That is just, that's excess fat that needs to go away. Yes.
The truth hurts.
Yeah, it does. It really does. And so that really helped me. And then they got me on the path to seeing an oncologist. But the important part of that is that I didn't wait for my GI doctor to recommend someone, because I told him, I said, I want you to recommend a doctor that you would send your own family or close friends to. And he says, he knew who I was. He knew my occupation here with the city. And he says, don't worry, my friend, I'm going to get you healthy so you can get back out there and protect us. And I said, okay. One of the best, I tell you, he and his staff are just excellent. So that takes me to the oncologist, and my oncologist, I told him, you're just a gift from God. He and his staff are just top-notch, phenomenal people. And when he saw me, he said to me, he says, number one, I want you to stay off of the internet. Do not Google this stuff.
A lot of people, as soon as they get diagnosed for something or tested something, we go to Google. Is the Google Docs. Doctors, WebEx, MD. I'm guilty of it. But that's not right, people. You need to actually go to the professionals. Want to stay in the know about what's happening in the city of Rockville? Sign up for Rockville's free e-newsletters. From upcoming events, community programs, to city services and announcements. Get updates that matter the most to you. Signing up is easy. Visit rockvillemd.gov/newsletters. That's rockvillemd.gov/newsletters, and stay in the know about what's happening in your city. But I want to, before you continue, you did something that I think most of us don't, and especially in our culture, we don't self-advocate. You said, you asked the doctor, like, I'm not going to wait on you. Like, you said, if there's a problem, this is the type of doctor I need to see, go tell me. How important was that to your diagnosis and your road to recovery of your self-advocacy? Because I don't think people realize that it's your body and you have a right to do that.
Exactly. So my mindset was like this because I spent 25 and a half years with the fire department, and I was, a firefighter and an EMT, and I rode the medic unit most of my career because I was stationed at a station that had an advanced life support system there, unit. So I was familiar with, doctors, and I've seen good ones and bad ones,
Yeah.
as far as bedside manners and things of that nature. So I said, let me start doing my research. So I started researching, and I came across a doctor, and this is the funny thing about it, because when I went back to the GI doctor, I said, well, do you have a couple of doctors for me? And he says, I have two in your area. And I said, okay, good. So he stated the first one, and I said, nah, that's in downtown Silver Spring, Maryland. I don't want to travel down there because I live in Silver Spring, Maryland, but I'm closer to the Albany, Maryland side.
Oh, okay.
So then I'd already selected the doctor that I wanted to see.
Mm-hmm.
And so I said, well, doc, so who do you have for me? And he says, well, I want you to see this doctor at Montgomery General Hospital. His name is Dr. Bannon.
Okay.
And I said, wow, okay. I said, that's amazing because that's the same guy who I've already selected.
Oh, wow. See?
Yeah. I said, you see how amazing God is?
Yes.
And I said, so I'm going to see Dr. Bannon. He says, Carl, I've sent family and friends to Dr. Bannon. He's top notch. And little did I know that when I got to know this gentleman, doctors, he's so well respected in the area that other doctors said to me, if I ever get sick, I'm going to see him. So I said, that is a blessing.
Yes.
I said, God is amazing,
Yes.
just to lead me in that direction. But it took my own research,
Right.
and that's what I'm here to tell people. Don't rely on others.
Right.
Do your research. Find out, look at their history, their background, and all of that.
And people need to, and also understanding that, yes, Carl was blessed to find someone. You might not find the best doctor for yourself the first try. You might have to go to another doctor and another doctor until they and you can build that relationship of trust where you're going to trust them with your care. So I definitely want the listeners to know that, yes, Carl was blessed and highly favored. He found someone. But also, sometimes in our community, we tend to give up easily. Where, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a victim of this myself, where if I don't have the best, interaction with a doctor, I'm like, well, just forget it. It'll go away. I'll just get some rest and some prayer. But we can't do that. Self-advocacy is so key because you have to look at it this way. If you're not going to care about your own health journey, you can't expect anybody else to. And we have to take ownership of that. So I just want to sort of piggyback on that when you finally found Dr. Bannon.
Bannon.
Yes, that is phenomenal. And that was just divine timing. But also, everyone, please know that if the first person is not a fit for you, keep trying. Don't give up.
Absolutely, Kathy. That's an important part because, and the thing that I have to emphasize is that it's like you said, self-advocacy. No one is more concerned or is going to take the interest in you like you.
Exactly.
You have to really you got to put in the work. And we're going to talk about that, all the work that I put in. But the thing that I found so intriguing or really special about Dr. Bannon, Paul Bannon is his name. He was the type of doctor that even with all of his experience and all of the accolades about him, he says, I'm going to send you out for a second opinion. Yeah. And my wife was like, hey, this is great.
Right.
Because initially they thought, oh, we're going to just treat you, no surgeries. We're going to treat you with radiation. Okay.
And that's
and I was like, okay, this is great. Because I was like, oh, no chemo. This is wonderful. And so he sent me to a doctor, or a radiologist, a cancer radiologist. And he said, no, my friend. He says, I don't want to just treat you with, pinpoint radiation. He said, because of the region, the way that the stomach is designed, there's a lot of little cavities down there. And these cells can be hiding. He says they can hide just like a little roach.
Not a roach.
Yes,
Oh
yes.
my.
No, it's funny because my wife and I laughed, and he's a great guy.
Yeah.
He says, no, they could hide out. And he says, I want to drench your body with chemo. He says, I want to drench your body with chemo so we make sure that we get it all. And he said to me, he said, I looked at him and I said, well, Doc, I'm not in favor of that. I was really on the fence. And I'm here to
Right.
tell people, me too, I was on the fence. I did not want to do chemo. I wasn't convinced that this was the only way to go because I told him my triangle was like this. At the top of my triangle was my faith. To the left was going to be my holistic
Right.
remedies. And then I said I would consider some of your, conventional methods. And he said it doesn't work like that. You just can't pick and choose what you want. He says there's
Right.
a regimen and you have to go with it. And I said, so you're telling me, what are you telling me, Doc? I said, are you telling me if I go with my prescription that I'm not going to be successful? He says, you're not going to be successful. So I said, you're telling me I'm going to die? He says, you're not going to be successful.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, it was that serious, and so my wife looked at me and she was tearing up because he says, Mr. Young, he says the type of cancer that you have, he says not only can I treat you, but I can cure you. And I said, He says, I have a 80 to 90% chance if you follow, he says, I want you to follow your pyramid, but I want you to include chemo in that. And I said, And I still wasn't convinced.
Right.
I wasn't convinced. I left his office and I told my wife I'm going to Germany. I said,
So you
okay.
you ain't having it.
No.
Say I'm gonna go over there and give me some holistic stuff.
Well, not only that, but when I was doing my research, I realized that in European nations, they allow the patient to really choose how they want to be treated.
Right.
A combination of holistic and conventional methods. And Germany had some of the best outcomes with the type of cancer that I had.
Did you get Germany from just your own research? How?
From my own research, it was Germany and
Now,
Switzerland.
I'm going to even break it down further because we'll say your own research, was that the internet? Was that books? Like, what did your research entail? Because honestly, you hear stories like this and they're like, I did my own research. And it's like, well, okay, well, what was that? Did you just go on the internet? Did you go to the library? Did you talk to some friends? Like, describe your research so that maybe this gives someone that's listening an idea that wants to research too about holistic avenues.
Sure. So my research was a combination of the American Cancer Society, some of the other John Hopkins University, some of their white papers on this disease. Particularly, I did a lot of research with the National Cancer Network, and out of this, I found that. Some of the most successful outcomes. Don't get me wrong; there are a lot of success stories here in
Yeah,
America
this
as
is
well.
your story.
Right. But, in my research, I found that, cancer in Germany, or the success stories with this type of cancer, were just like amazing. The outcomes.
Wow.
And I'm looking at quality of life afterwards, not just during treatment, but afterwards, no side effects and things of that nature. That's really what concerned me. And it's so important. I'm glad you said that, Kathy, because you have to go to credible sources.
Yeah.
You just don't want to go anywhere. But
can't.
I was looking at the World Health Organization.
Yes.
I was just researching any and everywhere
A
credible
plethora of
place.
knowledge. A plethora
Absolutely.
of
Just to
knowledge.
help me out. Yes.
Yeah, you said that your treatment plan combined like traditional chemotherapy with a holistic approach, like everything, I'm assuming, from juicing to meditation. Many listeners may not realize how powerful it can be to blend medical care with intentional lifestyle practices. What were your toughest parts of chemotherapy, and how did your holistic practices support your healing?
So the toughest part of chemo is just getting over the attitude that is so prevalent in our community. I had friends that had contacted me and said, "Hey, don't do chemo," and I was like, "Well, what are you talking about?" They were like, "That it's very toxic," and
Well,
I
the
said,
word chemo to a lot of people is very triggering or has a negative connotation because when you think cancer, people going through chemo, you hear all these like horror stories and people are just not successful. So, you can understand why people are saying, oh, don't do that.
Oh, absolutely. I understood, but I talked to them and I said, well, look at all the toxins that you're putting in your body.
Oh my.
When we start thinking about in our community, drinking certain, sugary
Yeah.
drinks, the, alcohol consumption,
Just our
cigarette
culture.
smoking.
Well, just
Yeah.
our culture is just ingrained because you go back to the time when enslaved people were eating scraps. So we had to make do with what we make do, and those traditions carried throughout our life. We didn't know any better. We just knew it was food. So the whole time, those greens, that macaroni and cheese, them ham hocks, all them things, right, that were rooted in our tradition, as we get older and grow, we understand that it's not so healthy for us. So I understand like how people can be when you were talking to them and they were like, oh, don't do it, or you know why would you do it when, like you said, every day, like if you have a Sunday meal after church, especially if you go to one of them Baptist churches, you're going to have all the fixings. So that's not good.
Oh, absolutely. But so a lot of this was, and don't get me wrong, there are good reasons why I believe some of our community is still suspicious of
Yeah.
healthcare. We know the history with some of the medical trials that were practiced on, African American men, and so I do get it. I understand. But one of the things that I relayed to my friend at the time, I said, listen, this isn't the federal government treating me. This is a private physician, and he has my best interest. So I still wasn't convinced that I was going to do chemo, though. I still
Okay.
wasn't. And it wasn't until I got an anonymous, well, not an anonymous, but my supervisor here texted me one morning and said, hey, listen, I have a family member that has gone through what you're going through, and they were very successful. And I mean, just out of nowhere, it was just weird because out of nowhere, I
Right.
get this text, and she didn't even know I was on the fence with chemo. But out of nowhere, she sent me a text and said, "Hey, listen, I'm rooting for you,
Right.
and my loved one was very successful with chemo, and so that kind of changed my mind. And then my wife kind of convinced me. She was like, she's an accountant. She says, I love those odds. 80 to 90%.
Exactly.
I like those
She was like, I
odds.
like them.
Yeah. So, and then once I really sat down and talked to my oncologist, Dr. Paul Bannon, he convinced me as well. He's like, listen, man, why would you go to Germany when your base, your friendship, all your support
Your
systems
support
are
said
here?
here.
They're
Yeah.
here. He said, and why spend all that money? He said, it's not even worth it. So stay here. And, I did, and I'm
How
here.
long was chemo?
Chemo was 4 months. I did 4 months of chemo. Very, how can I put this? I tell people when I look at chemo now, I look at it differently. I look at it as the thing that really helped me survive.
Yeah.
And it's not, when people look at it, they look at it as a toxin. Yes, it is. But I look at it now, chemo, as it's a drug that's here, that scientists have helped design this to keep us alive and to cure us. So
Yeah.
I look at chemo differently, and it was 4 months of intense chemo. RCHOP, which is a very
Aggressive.
toxic.
Toxic.
It is,
Wow.
but it's toxic because it had to kill those bad cells. It had to kill those cancer cells, and unfortunately, sometimes what happens is it's going to kill some good cells as well.
Yeah.
And that's why my immune system was really stripped. I couldn't be around family and friends, and for those 4 months when I was in treatment. Well, really, actually, so with my regimen. Once I had treatment, and they would boost my immune system, they would give me shots to
Okay.
help
So it was
boost
like
that
a
immune.
combination. Rockville, your voice matters. Take some time and complete the Community Budget Priorities Survey. Head to rockvillemd.gov/budget. Your responses are valuable input to help the mayor and council make decisions on city projects, services, and initiatives that may be included in the city budget. Do good by your neighborhood by letting us know what you care about. So head to rockvillemd.gov/budget right now. The survey is in English, Spanish, and simplified Chinese. So let's rise together, Rockville, because your voice matters. when did you start infusing your holistic methods? Because I know, like we've talked before. Like I said, you called me in the hallway and told me your story. I was like, oh, okay. I think some people need to hear this. But you started like meditation, and then you used a app. What was it called? Yuka or something?
Yuka. It's a
Okay.
Yuka app. So let me take you back. So before I truly was diagnosed, I
Okay.
had already started a journey with weight loss.
Oh,
Because
okay.
remember, my kidney doctor, my nephrologist had already told me I was obese. So I'd already started healing my body. I'd already put on my armor because I knew I was in a fight for my life.
Mm-hmm.
So former military, former, like I said, firefighter, I
Right.
knew that I had to prepare myself for war. I was going to war with this invasion in my body, and I looked at it as this is a bully that's picking on me. I didn't choose this. So I says, I'm going to have to knock this bully out.
Right.
Okay. And that was my theme song throughout because my mother always told me, she says, you don't start any trouble, but
But you end it. That's
if
right.
bullies come for you, you
That's
knock
right.
them
Don't
out.
start none, won't be none.
Yeah, so my theme song, I have to tell you, was LL Cool J. Mama
Mama
said,
go
knock
knock
you
you
out.
out.
Yes. And hey, listen, I tell people that and they find it funny. But so I had started preparing my body. So then I started my meditation. I started my breath work. I started realizing that the cold showers and everything that I'd heard about. A friend of mine had sent me this podcast by a fella named Gary Brecker. And I started following him because he had helped some celebrities out. And I started following him and I was like, wow. So I started immediately just going out and grounding my body with the earth, taking my shoes off and getting in contact with nature, letting the sun drench my body. The vitamin D is so essential for us, okay? But most importantly, for anxiety. The biggest part of the meditation and my prayer, I started every morning with prayer, meditation, reading my Bible, and that was it was wonderful for my mind. Psychologically, it just helped me because, like I said, I had one bad day of anxiety, and that was early on because I expected to hear the diagnosis from my doctor. I'm kind of
Right.
old school where they call you.
Right.
No, they put this in my portal, so I got to notice that, hey, there's a message in your portal. So that's how I discovered the pathology report.
Oh,
It
wow.
was in my portal and I read it, and I was at home in the office and I read this and I said, whoa. And I sat down and I just prayed and I said, hey, I got a fight on my hands, but I'm going to be okay.
Walk me through that when you read the words, right, of your diagnosis. Like, what was the process? Like emotionally, mentally, spiritually? You tapped on it, but take me to that moment. You just opened up the portal and you're like, what does this mean? And take me to that moment.
Well, so when I first read it, Kathy, the first thing that hit me was, how do I tell my wife?
Mm.
How do I
Yep.
tell her? Because honestly, I got to confess, I wasn't going to tell her.
Now, how you not gonna tell
I
her?
wasn't, because knowing her, she's a very sensitive person, and I said, man, I don't know how to tell her. So I was going to, and I just read an article about Dwayne Wade, how he kept his diagnosis from his wife, and
Oh,
I was thinking I'm gonna do the same thing.
yeah, no,
No, a buddy of mine called me, and I called a buddy of mine, and he's like, you can't do
you
that.
can't.
He says, how are you going to hide this for? He says, months. And I
Months.
said, I don't know. I'm going to figure it out. But at that moment, the first thing that I was concerned about was making sure she was going to be okay. I wasn't
Right.
even thinking about myself emotionally, because I said, hey, I'm strong enough that I know whatever happens to me, I'm going to be okay. Whether I remain here in this natural form or I go and transition with my Heavenly Father, I'm
Mm-hmm.
okay. And so initially that was what stuck with me, I should say. But then, Kathy, it was relief. I
Mm.
was relieved because I knew what was going on.
Yeah.
So for all of those months, I didn't know exactly what was happening inside my body. But once they gave me the diagnosis, I said, okay,
Okay.
fine.
Now this thing has a name.
Yes, it's cancer. And I wanted to remove the
Yeah.
stigma from it. That's why I'm talking to you today about it, because I want to have conversations around cancer and other diseases that are affecting our community, but all communities, and
Yes.
say, listen, we should be able to talk about this like the common cold,
Hmm.
not hiding behind, oh, it's the C word, this, that, and the other. No, out in the open, this is cancer. And like my doctor said to me, we unfortunately in our community we tend to believe that it's a death sentence, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
We think it's inevitable, and it doesn't have to be. Now, like he told me, he says, Carl, you put in a lot of work. So the grounding, like I said, the earthing, that work. But the juicing, making sure that I had fresh juice in my body every day. I grew to love, kale, and I didn't like kale before. I
Right.
mean,
Right.
but I grew to really love, and I still love lacinato kale. I love,
Lacinato kale. I never.
yeah,
I just know about the kale that's in the dough salad mix. I guess there's levels to this.
there are levels to it. In the lacinato kale, they call it dinosaur kale as well, but it looks just old and prehistoric, and it's a sweeter taste
Hmm.
to it, but really good, full of so many vitamins
Where
and.
do you go to find this stuff? Like, I know we all start at the beginning of the year, our New Year's resolutions. We're going to eat healthy, we're going to work on our body. And then by week 2, we give up because, like, there's no stores or we don't know where to go. Like, where do you go to get this stuff? Is it farmers markets? Are there, like, because honestly, people, I know for me, I say every year, oh, this is the year. I'm going to take care of my body, be more, deliberate about what I put in my mouth, what I
Mhm.
eat. How did you go about finding these places that had these things that could help you with this health journey of being more naturally based?
Well, fortunately, I always, uh, ate well. I prided myself in, you know, trying to put the best in my body to get the best out of my body. So, just your regular grocery stores. Now, admittedly, I didn't always eat organic because I
Yeah.
thought, oh man, I don't need to spend extra money on this organic. But now everything that goes in my body, and you referenced the Yuka app, I scan it. This is an app that you can put on your phone, and you can
Mm-hmm.
scan all of the food, all of your water, anything that you put, even cosmetics, anything that goes on your body or in your body. I recommend scanning this so you know what kind of toxins are in it. It's another way of advocating for yourself. I find this app to be fun because now I get to look at, saturated fat content in some of the food. I get to look at how, sodium content
Mm-hmm.
and toxins. I was using products that they were calling it vegan, and it really wasn't.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah, yeah. Every day. So no, I pride myself now. Nothing touches my body or goes in my body without using this app.
That's awesome. One thing, we all know healing doesn't happen alone. I'm so glad you finally told your wife.
Yeah, yeah.
I
She is.
mean,
Yeah,
I
she
mean,
was as well.
really?
Yeah. Oh
But
yeah.
also, we can't deny that we have to work to live. Um, how was like your space here at the city? Like was like the support. You said that while you were debating on if you were going to have chemotherapy, that one of your colleagues like just texted you out of the blue and was like, "Hey, just so you know, yeah,
So interesting because I had already determined that I was going to take off work. Some people they choose to work through chemo or through their journey, and unfortunately, I just had leave
yeah,
accrued that I could take off work. So they were very supportive. The director at that time was very supportive, and he said to me, he says, "Hey, do what you need to do to take care of your body." And everybody around me, of course, with HIPAA regulations, they couldn't
mm-hmm,
talk about
yeah,
why I was
of
out.
course, of
But
course."
people noticed, and I started getting phone calls, and I said, "Listen, I don't mind talking about it." And I told them what was going on with me, and prayers, cards came
That's
in.
right.
The former deputy director here sent me a card almost every week to keep me encouraged.
Mm-hmm.
My colleagues, but most importantly, my immediate staff,
Yes.
my fire protection engineer. I mean, she was just amazing to take on not only her role, but she had to take on my role and
Yeah.
responsibilities. And everybody on the team stepped up. But something interesting I want to share with you all about that. So a lot of people, this is new information. So
Okay.
one of the things that I did, I'm big on visualization. Okay.
Okay.
So one of the things that I did, and I told my team, my immediate team, what I did, and they were like, that's a little interesting. But when I was in chemo, in the infusion, I would sit there between 7 and 8 hours, once a month. But what I thought when I was getting the treatment, I imagined what we have a command structure in the fire department where we have an incident commander. So my fire protection engineer was the incident commander, and all the other team members, they're mostly former firefighters. Okay.
Okay.
So what I imagine is that they were helping me. I visualized that they were inside my belly with fire hoses, going to work with fire hoses, and using the chemo to actually spray on those tumors and helping me along the way. And it was so funny because when I told them, I said, I made you take your boots off, though. I said, I made you take your boots off. And they were like, Carl, that is just amazing. And I said, yeah, because I had to visualize where I wanted to be. In order for me to get there, I needed help from a bigger community. I couldn't do it all on my own. So I engaged them, and I could hear Shannon saying to them, hey, what's it looking like in there? And they're like, hey, we're getting it. We're getting it. So now one of my team members, he happens to be vegan. So he would tell them, hey, no, don't give me that fire hose. Give me some carrots. Give me some kale. He's rubbing the kale and everything on there. And it was so funny because when I told my chemo nurse about it, she said, Carl, she said, you need to write a book. And I said, no, not a book.
Maybe you should.
No. I said, no, not a book. I told her it is just my spirit to live and my determination that I wasn't going to ever give up. I said, no matter how this turns out, like Jimmy V said, from North Carolina State, he said, back in the day, and I used to watch his ESPY award, never give up. You never, ever give up. When you're battling this disease or any disease, you never give up. And I tell people that when you fight with vigor, no matter what the outcome is, you're successful because you never, ever gave up.
And you did not. Lastly, as we wrap this conversation up, you have been disease-free for how long now?
Oh, it's for 7 months.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you.
Congratulations. One thing that we end the podcast with, if you could tell me one word that describes you, what would be that word and why?
Determined.
And why determined?
Well, people often say that I'm stubborn, and I say I'm determined.
I'm gonna use that.
So when they tell me that I'm stubborn, I said no, I'm determined. I've always been that way from a child, and I'm determined to, with discipline and focus, to get to, with proper planning, to get to where I want to be in life.
I appreciate that. Carl, thank you so much. Your health journey is so incredible. I hope that all the listeners really pay attention to how he went about taking his health journey seriously and how he did the research. So it will be great information for everyone that's listening. So again, Carl, thank you for sharing your powerful journey with us. Your story is a reminder of how important it is for Black men to listen to their bodies, speak up, and seek care early. And it highlights the difference the strong support from family, community, even here at Rockville, can make a difference during your toughest time. To our listeners, let Carl's experience be a call to action. Schedule your checkups. Ask the questions. Pay attention to what your body is telling you. And encourage the men in your life to do the same. Health conversations save lives. Take care of yourselves. Take care of each other. And keep this conversation going. For Carl Young, I'm Kathy Dantzler, Director of Communications and Community Engagement. Thanks for listening. Until next time, Rockville. The views, thoughts, and opinions expressed by guests on the City of Rockville's conversations and podcasts are their own and do not represent the views, thoughts, or opinions of the City of Rockville or its elected officials. The material and information shared during these podcasts are for general informational purposes only and do not imply endorsement or opposition to any individual, group, organization, product, or service. These podcasts are intellectual property of the City of Rockville and cannot be used or repurposed without permission.